Morning all, and welcome back to another episode of the STYRKA Podcast by Strengths by Fitness. Today I want to talk about protein, the science and fitness and health outcomes that we can expect. It's based on a fresh fact-based article where I took a look at some fresh of the press 2024 studies while sorting out the real-life impact of high protein on fitness and health and aging. So, first thing first, this article and podcast is based not on just the latest 2024 studies, but decades of my own fact-based, highly informed, healthy fit living and my decade-spanning full-time job as a nutritional coach and personal trainer. Where I've been helping people achieve vastly better strength, health, muscle mass, metabolic health, body composition, and cardio capacity in and outside of the gym. And when we put all this together, this podcast is what we arrive at. So let's talk about the first big food pillar, protein first, because this is the easiest food pillar there is, and unlike so-called food hacks, it's 100% backed up by science and real-life outcomes by hundreds of millions of people, or tens of millions of people. I don't know how many eat high-protein diets, but over the decades, this is what works. So, this major food pillar, high protein should be the major food pillar. It's no surprise to long-time readers or clients of mine, or anyone that's keeping up to date with actual science. I've been talking about the science and real-life benefits and importance of high-protein food plans for 15 to 20 years. So there's no grand shake-up here with the latest studies, but they are reinforcing and validating and expanding our knowledge on the fact-based approach I've chiseled out for the last 20 plus years. And with more data points and layers being peeled away, we can all fine-tune, adapt, assess, and improve upon things. And that's the never-ending benefit of having a fact-based approach. It's constantly becoming better. No matter if we're talking about body composition, health, fitness, aging, we add to it. So, this is why we can now state with absolute confidence that high protein plans are the easiest way to vastly improve individual health, fitness, and body composition, making protein the most important macronutrient, no matter what your fitness and body composition goals are. But why? Why is that? You see, high protein plans improve not just protein-related hypertrophy and protein synthesis, which is great for fitness, but a high protein intake also improves satiety in a very noticeable way across the board. And tons of health metrics. But let's talk about satiety. Satiety matters because it makes it much easier for everyone to eat within their actual energy balance, while also decreasing hunger feelings. So on the one hand, we know that the more protein people eat, the better their protein synthesis response becomes, and the better they will recover from physical activity, such as lifting weights, or running, playing soccer, martial arts, or swimming, or whatever you do. And this, on its own, is already tremendously important and very beneficial. And it leads to better health and fitness progression from the regular, ongoing physical activity, fitness and sports that you participate in. Better recovery also matters outside of the impact it has on our fitness progression, because the better we recover from our daily activities, the better our health and daily energy the following days. and the lower risk of injuries and illness. And recovery includes the brain, daily energy. All the while, eating within our real energy balance is of great importance for everyone, because when we eat within the real nutritional intake our bodies need to thrive and be its best without adding excess body fat, as opposed to eating as much as our feelings, mind and hunger tells us to eat, our health, our aging, our fitness and body composition outcomes all becomes vastly superior. So high protein food plans gives us all these easy big pillar benefits across all of it: fitness, health, aging, cognitive health, organ health. Namely, the more protein we eat, the better we deal with the price of recovery from fitness, stress and physical activity. And the more protein we eat, the less food in total we almost automatically end up consuming, making it far easier to lose excess body fat and remaining at a healthy body fat and lean muscle mass and strength level, all while allowing us to remain healthier across our entire health span. All around healthy fit victories for protein. And you will notice I mentioned health span. In other words, it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 70. High protein is beneficial, and one can easily say that the older we get, the more beneficial it becomes to eat high protein. So let's talk about some studies and protein questions. Because some people are adamant that plant-based protein is superior, and others are equally adamant that protein has to come from meat or fish or chicken or cow milk at the very least. But neither of these two absolutes are correct. You can safely consume omnivore protein, and you can safely consume nothing but plant-based protein too. It's not about embarking upon an absolute protein team, which would be animals versus plants. The real world science-backed truth is that if you eat in a effective way with not just high protein and the resulting high satiety, but you also eat diverse enough to reach what I call nutritional completeness, you will be all good no matter if you go getting your protein from omnivore or plant-based foods. So anyone who is trying to make the claim that your protein sources has to be meat and dairy is incorrect. Just as how anyone who is making the claim that eating plant-based foods or animal-based food sources has no consideration at all is equally wrong. Because there are some very real considerations with both omni and plant-based proteins. No matter what your protein sources are, there are real fact-based considerations to take into account. But what remains clear is that a high protein intake is universally better than a lower protein intake that is closer to the RDA. It's better for health outcomes, it's better for the way we age, it's better for our lifelong fitness progression, it's better for satiety, and it makes it much easier to get off and permanently stay away from the obesity train. All great news, right? And yes, it is, but I also know that you crave some protein data by now. So here it is, and you can also find the links in the description to the cited studies. Study 1. The higher people's protein intake are, on average, the lower the total energy intake becomes. Easy win. This because this provides us with much higher satiety and healthier outcomes throughout our entire health span. And high protein benefits growing kids, teenagers, 20-year-olds, young people in their 50s and elderly people in their 70s and 80s. This study also shows us that even omnivores and carnivores will do really well to take note of the immense health benefits of eating more plant-based protein. Why, you might ask? Because on average, for every 3% increase in total protein consumption out of people's total nutritional intake, health span became 5% less likely to develop a wide range of health issues, which is amazing, of course. The power of protein also lowers health risks while making us all leaner and fitter. In order to get fitter and more physically capable in a real way, you would obviously have to exercise too. But healthy lean beats obesity, even if you're sedentary. However, while eating high protein is always good, those health benefits shoots through the roof if you adopt more plant-based protein, which is not the same thing as saying that you have to go 100% plant-based. So, what additional health benefits do you get from increasing the amount of plant-based protein in your diet? Well, if you take the same 3% of additional protein, and we say that for every 3% of additional plant-based protein that the participants in the study consumed, they improved their health span outcomes with a massive 38% risk reduction. Yes, you read it correctly if you're reading my article, and you heard it correctly if you're listening to this podcast. Increasing total protein consumption, no matter what the protein is, already improves your health span outcomes with 5% for every 3% increase. But if that 3% increase comes from plant-based protein, that the health span improvement becomes a massive 38% health risk reduction. So, question number 2. If I eat more protein, won't I end up eating more total nutrients and end up in an average energy surplus that leads to higher levels of body fat? And the answer is no. That's a common misconception, especially amongst women and sedentary men, because the usual takeaway is that gym bros who consume high amounts of protein ends up with a higher fat percentage compared to what a lower protein intake would have led to, which comes in part from many misinformed strong men and women that doesn't train for better health, but they only train to be as strong as is possible. Going to the gym, lifting weights is incredibly healthy for everyone, no matter their age, and everyone really should be lifting weights. But some people just love to throw around biggest weights, or compete with throwing around biggest weights. And the more we eat in total, the stronger you kind of become. If you're in a big surplus, or a surplus at all, it's much easier building strength and muscle mass and recovering. And if you don't care about your health outcomes over time, and you don't care about how you look, then it's easier just piling on weights in the gym and weights on the scale. For everyone else that's not competing, there's no need to bulk perpetually, and there are no health benefits from having excess body fat. But not every human on the planet makes fact-based choices, which is why we used to see pretty obese people competing in strength sports. Because if you permanently overeat, it just makes it easier to build strength and muscle mass to a point. Easier doesn't mean better, and it certainly doesn't mean healthier. I'm mentioning this for a couple of reasons. A, it's important to acknowledge that while higher protein food plans make it much easier to eat within your actual energy balance, so much easier that the majority of people that consume high protein, high satiety food plans will automatically end up eating within that healthy natural energy balance. It is still possible for highly motivated people like all those brutish strong men and women that are really determined to overconsume food to do so. But that's actually hard work. So it's very unlikely to ever happen for most people if satiety comes from high protein and whole plant-based fiber. And the solution is, of course, to assess and adapt according to your progression. And when you do adapt your food intake versus activity levels, don't lower your protein intake. Lower your fat intake, first of all. And secondly, lower your quality carb intake. We have no need for low quality carbs. We have no need for worthless fats. We need essential fats, and if we're into sports and strength training in particular, high quality carbs are great. Provides great energy, and plant-based foods contain both fibers and carbs for energy. So we need good essential fats, and we benefit from high quality whole plant-based carbs and fiber. It's just a junk nutrition that no one needs, no matter if you're high fat, low fat, high carb, low carb, or whatever. Just be a high protein person. B, it's important to understand that a high protein food plan that provides a total nutritional intake within your natural energy balance will never make you fat. Some people can consume high protein and still overeat, but most will have a very, very hard time doing so. Luckily enough, we can make things even better than just eating high protein with a few small tweaks. And that's what we will cover now. High protein plus high quality plant-based fibers. That's my take on it. Because we already know that higher protein food plans are amazing for us. But when we add high quality plant-based foods sources to our high protein menu, we end up with not just quality carbs and other very beneficial micronutrients, but we also get much more fiber in our food. More fiber and nutritional completeness does not just improve our health span outcomes in a drastic way, but it further pushes total satiety up and satiety per calorie even higher, once again benefiting vastly better body composition and health while making life easier. There's no need to count calories, there's no need to track any of your macronutrients when you eat like this. Well, actually, if your energy levels crater and you lose too much mass, then you might actually be eating so much protein and fiber that you end up in a deficit that is too big. So if that's the case, you have to add back meals to your day. So assess and adapt. But you don't actually have to count the exact nutritional intake. So life is much easier like this. So whole plant-based foods have a tremendous amount of micronutrients, which is great, while usually delivering very moderate to small amounts of calories and requiring substantial food volumes to do so. Once again, leading to a high protein plus whole plant-based food plan having a very high satiety score, very high protein, very high fiber, very high micronutrient content, all delivered with a low energy profile. And all this is probably why a 3% increase in plant-based protein led to a much bigger health risk decrease. It's good for you, a very good combo. So the outcome of eating like this is way better health outcomes, better fitness progression, less body fat, less hunger, better biological processes and cognitive health. And it's happening all without you having to worry about measuring the food volume or keeping tabs of the amount of calories you roughly eat and use up. As a bonus, it also leads to healthier aging. So, time for another study. So in this study, we see that there are some very high satiety per calorie plant-based foods that are low on protein. And I'm including this snippet here because healthy food choices aren't exclusively about achieving a high protein content. So make protein the number one food pillar in your life, because that solves most food-related puzzles for most people. And then you add whole plant-based foods around it. Raspberries, for instance, score very high on satiety. It's very satiating for most people, but it's only contains roughly 10 to 11% protein. Baby carrots are another one with even less protein, around 8 to 9%. Cucumbers are amazing too, providing nutrients, satiety, and only around 15%-ish protein. So satiety is heavily tied into high protein, but it's not only about high protein. It also correlates with foods that contain a high fiber content. And it becomes even better if that food provides a high amount of micronutrients with a low energy total and high food volume. Berries, celery, carrots, and cucumbers are great examples of the massive satiety benefits of whole plant-based foods. Yet another study. This study compared low-carb, high-fat participants versus low-fat, high-carb participants and outcomes in body composition. All strength-trained males. And that was the two groups, low-carb, high-fat, low-fat, high-carb. And both groups consumed 2 grams of protein per kilo of fat-free mass. And yes, high protein. Omnivores should eat minimum 1.6 gram of protein per kilo of fat-free mass, and plant-based people should consume a minimum of 1.8 gram. So in this study, the consumption of protein was 2.0 gram per kilo of fat-free mass, which is good. After 12 weeks, the outcome was such a small difference between the two groups in body composition that it was considered statistically insignificant. So I'm including this because this lack of obvious difference between these two groups provides further evidence that the total energy balance intake and total protein and fiber intake matter the most for body composition outcomes, due to the combined increase in satiety and associated health benefits of protein, fiber, and whole plant-based nutrients. Whether you achieve that by eating low-fat or high-fat doesn't matter. One more study. In this study, it was determined that eating any food increases acute blood glucose spikes and insulin to facilitate the anabolic impact of eating food. In other words, hyperinsulinemia only occurs with excess body fat. As such, when you replace non-protein macronutrients with higher levels of protein, you will end up with a drastically increased likelihood of reducing your caloric intake, which promotes, as you know, reduced body fat and reduced insulin. Study number 4. How do different dietary trends affect athletic performance? In this study, they looked at plant-based intake and omnivore intake. The plant-based intake was likely to increase various beneficial nutrients in the diet, high quality carbs, high fiber, nitrates. This might improve performance. There was no downsides to it. And what you need to consider is that plant-based proteins do have a slightly lower natural amino acid profile and absorption rates, which reduce the actual intake and progression from resistance training if your total protein intake is too low. So that's another win for high protein intake, because I already told you the easy fix. Consume more plant-based protein relative to the omnivore recommendations to maximize hypertrophy, strength outcomes, health, and recovery. And that, in real life, that means consume a minimum of 1.8 grams of plant-based protein per kilo of body weight, lean mass. Lean mass, goal weight if you're obese. If you're really lean, you can just base it on your body weight. And that's your minimum. For omnivores, the minimum is 1.6 grams. As an extra consideration, make sure to get your plant-based protein from several different daily protein sources. It's all good with high protein intake, but don't get 200 grams of protein from pea-based protein powder. Make sure you get your protein from several different protein sources, because this makes sure that the plant-based amino acid profile becomes as good as the omnivore amino acid profile. One more study. This study showed us that higher protein plants leads to better body fat management. And yet another study looked at how plant-based food plans scale protein intake while performing just as well for strength and muscle mass. Once again confirming 1.8 gram per kilo of lean mass and day as the daily minimum intake for plant-based people that wish to maximize their benefits of health, fitness progression, and recovery. Another study looked at comparing omnivore protein and plant-based protein and comparing it to collagen supplements, and the takeaway is focus on real protein, no matter if it's omnivore or plant-based, and just forget about collagen supplements. Because whey, pea, and collagen protein supplementation beyond RDA on integrated myofibril protein synthesis rates in older males found that collagen provided no protein synthesis benefits at all, but whey and pea protein provided the same benefits. Yet another study, and the conclusion is simple: just eat more protein. This study showed us that high protein food plans enhance muscular performance and skeletal muscle mass in resistance trained males. And it doesn't matter when you eat. So the consequence is that total daily protein intake appears to be the primary nutrient-based factor in muscle growth induced by exercise. So, if we summarize all of this, eating your protein intake following RDA is dead in the water. Eat more protein. Have yet another study which compared RDA protein intake versus 1.6 grams per kilo of lean muscle mass over 12 weeks of strength training. In that study here, the conclusion here is very clear and sound, and that is that 1.6 grams of protein per kilo of lean mass and day is a much healthier and better minimum intake for protein if you're following an omnivore food plan, and for plant-based it's 1.8. But how much better is it? Well, in this study, we actually noticed double the strength and lean muscle mass progression when participants consume 1.6 gram of protein instead of following RDA. RDA is 0.8. Which begs a question, by the way. If 1.6 or 1.8 is this great already, why would anyone ever go even higher? Well, it's true that very few, hardly anyone to be fair, see additional hypertrophy or strength gains from going even higher with the protein intake. That's just how it is. But as the previously mentioned studies and the real-life outcomes of tens of million people should tell you, the higher we go with our protein and fiber intake, the less likely we are to feel hungry or therefore overconsume on total nutrients. So going even higher on protein might make it so easy for you to eat within your real energy balance without ever feeling hungry or ever having to track your food intake, that for you might have to go even higher. All this, no matter how high you go, or if you stick to 1.6 or 1.8, high protein provides much better aging, healthier body fat levels, better organ and bone mass health, better strength and muscle mass across our entire health span. You get much better recovery from sports, cognitive health improve, recovery after injuries improve. So it's all good. In all this, there is one caveat. And I already mentioned it, because we still need to eat enough food to remain happy, healthy, and high functioning. So in other words, you can't only eat protein. You can't eat 700 grams of protein per day if your energy balance actually need roughly 5,000 calories and magically think that you're going to be fine over the long run. Because if your actual need is around 5,000 calories and you only eat 700 grams of protein, first of all, you would be in a massive 1,500 plus energy balance deficit per day, which works short term, but it won't feel too great in the long run. But also because if you're trying to get all your nutrients from nothing but protein sources, that will end up with nutritional deficiencies over time, which are not healthy or doable in any way long term. So we can't live only on protein. The human body needs some fat, so we have to include healthy fats in our daily food. You also should not fear whole plant-based foods, even if you're on a low-carb diet, such as fruit, berries, and veggies. These things make things better. They are loaded, as we have mentioned, with micronutrients. They improve satiety even more. So veggies and fruits and berries make things better, no matter your food drive. They don't make things worse. Now, this brings me to the final point for this podcast. High protein, high fat diets with a strict low carb intake have short-term fat loss benefits, especially for obese people. So it's all good. You can be low carb, high fat, and high protein. But once you have reached a healthier body mass composition, getting a low to moderate carb intake from healthy whole plant-based foods improves health and fitness metrics and ease of life and adherence compared to a very strict low-carb approach. And this holds even more true if you're also maintaining a regular fitness plan, and especially if you're lifting weights. Muscles do really, really good. Intense interval sports like martial arts, wrestling, sprinting, lifting weights, all this do really, really good on high-quality carbs. In other words, do not get stuck in the trenches of any food team. Assess and adapt what fits for you, what works for you, what makes you happy, what helps your health, body composition, and your training. But listen to the science. Listen to the science, assess and adapt, make your changes that make sense to you. And make those accessions and adaptations based on your progression in health and fitness. Just always maintain protein is your number one nutrient pillar, because high protein always helps. The biggest caveat to that, let me end with it. All this applies for everyone, unless you have a very rare medical health issue that makes low protein intake a necessity. But in that case, you have a diagnosis from the medical industry, so you're well aware. Make high protein your number one nutrient food pillar, and make fibers from high quality plant-based foods your second most important nutrient. And by approaching food intake in this fact-based but very easy way, you will transform your lifelong adventure into a very easy and health-promoting affair. See you next time. Bye.